Hey everybody, welcome back. So I've had a lot of people reach out over the months and ask what has kind of saved me in this process. And while I'm not 100% through the process by any means, there have definitely been some things that I know have been my life rafts through it and have given me hope and have given me inspiration and have given me a respite from my symptoms, a respite from the process. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I would say in the most acute days, I began to be able to read late at night. So, for a long time, I couldn't read or do anything like that, which was devastating considering my whole life has been about reading and coming up with stories and loving other people's stories and listening to other people's stories, right? And suddenly I was just left with this vacant spot in my brain that had been, part of what I've loved about being a therapist all these years is other people's stories and being a part of them and being privy and honored enough to be a witness to those. But when I began to read, my sister-in-law gave me an Ellen Hildebrand book. And she's written over 20 books now, and most of them are centered in Nantucket. There's a series that is actually out of the Caribbean in terms of the setting, but the main setting for her books is Nantucket. And I began to slowly devour these books, and I would read them, and then I would read them again, and I would read them again, and I would read them again, and I would just get lost in Nantucket. Nantucket became my idealized respite. And the characters became my friends. I mean, this was at a time where I was really out of touch with everybody except for my family. And, not only was COVID going on, but I was sick. And so the isolation was profound. And so I suddenly began to feel my internal world being populated again by these characters that Miss Hildebrand brought to life in such a real and authentic way. And she has a great gift for not just creating stories, but characters that are so relatable. They are people in your life, and so that saved my life actually. Those books, and I have all of them. They're all on my bookshelves, I return to them all the time. And when I'm having a tough time now, I'll return to one, and I've read it maybe 3 or 4 times already. But they're people I know, they're characters I know. It's a place I know, and it calms me down. In addition to Miss Hildebrand's books, I actually went back a little bit to my first love, my first author that I loved, which was Judy Blume. And I'd had the pleasure of meeting Judy at her bookshop in Key West years ago. And she was just as lovely in person as I imagined her to be, coming up again with some of the characters that shaped my childhood, from Deanie to Margaret. I actually haven't seen the movie yet, so I'm excited to see the movie. But so many of the characters, Sally J. Friedman and Super Fudge, and all of them, they were the characters of my life, especially Margaret. And Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I mean, that carried me through my move from New Jersey to Texas. So anyway, I went back through and read some of those books. So those were 2 things that really saved me in this. I think outside of that, the turning to philosophy and getting back into Stoicism. And, if you're not familiar with Stoicism, it's an ancient philosophy. Marcus Aurelius is probably the most famous of the ancients that you might have heard of. Epictetus and Seneca, and it's very much it's a philosophy based on practical wisdom, and it's actually a philosophy that's really based on, putting your energy on things you can actually control. And being efficacious in your life and not putting your energy on things that are out of your control. So you can imagine in our withdrawal, this has been huge. And so Ellen Hildebrand, Judy Blume, Stoicism and all of its both ancient and contemporary writers like Ryan Holiday that take this ancient philosophy and apply it to our current lives. And then I'll just say, one other thing that I think was helpful in addition to this was basically, getting back into some idea of faith. And again, that can look different for each person. But for me, the recognition of like, okay, this is my time slot here on earth. This is what I was granted. I wasn't told that it would all be easy or that it would all be fun or that it would all be a joyride. I had been blessed for many, many decades, and I hope to be blessed for many more decades. And this is a chapter in my book, that this chapter is a sad one. This chapter has been a hard one, but it's just a chapter. And when you're in it, when you're in the middle of your chapter of pain or sorrow or misfortune or dysphoria, it can feel like it's the whole story, beginning, middle, and end, but it's just a chapter. And so I think out of everything, those would be the things that I think saved me the most. Specifically, Ellen Hildebrand, Judy Blume, Stoic philosophy, my faith. And I think, I'll say one final one as I'm thinking about it, because how can I leave her out? Claire Weeks. Oh my gosh. The fact that I was in the field of mental health for 27 years and had never heard of this woman who was just a renegade and a woman before her time, writing in the 60s and 70s about nervous suffering. And the fact that I made it through all those years of higher education and working in world-class hospitals and working in a private practice and being constantly in self-study myself, and had never heard of Claire Weeks. So she has also a great biography about her called The Woman That Cracked the Code. It's written by Judith Hord, and I actually wrote to Judith, and we've become little pen pals, kind of back and forth a little bit. And but she wrote a brilliant biography of Claire Weeks that you don't want to miss if that's something that would interest you, because if you've ever known somebody or you yourself have struggled with any level of anxiety, Claire Weeks was the person back in the 60s that had nailed it. And somehow or another, yes, we've had people that have picked it up, but unfortunately we tend to do more harm than good in the field for people that have nervous suffering of any kind, anxious suffering of any kind. And so Claire was an inspiration in this as well. So just wanted to share these things because I've been asked that a lot lately, and I think it's a good question for us to focus on what's working and what's helping us and what's useful, because we can get lost in that dysphoric vortex of what's wrong and what's missing and what's been lost. Thanks for listening, guys.